Chapter 32 in Hebrew, the letters for 32 is Lamed and Bet. As we know in Hebrew, there's actually no numbers in the Torah. Everything is hinted through letters. Letters are the Hebrew numbers. So let's say Aleph would be 1, Bet would be 2, Gimel would be 3. So that would make Lamed would be number 30 in the alphabet, and the Bet would be 2. So the Lamed and the Bet makes up the numbers 32, which is the chapter we're up to. But the word Lamed and Bet, if you put those two letters together, it also makes a word, which is the word Lev. Lev means the heart. So this chapter, which we're about to learn, chapter 32, is known as the heart of Tanya. And the reason why it's known as the heart of Tanya, besides for it being a number 32, is also because the entire chapter is all about love, how we are supposed to love another person, a fellow Jew, how we're supposed to treat them, how we're supposed to look at them. It's really an amazing chapter, and I'm excited to do it together. Interestingly enough, originally, in the first print of the Tanya, chapter 32 wasn't there. The Alter Rebbe, he inserted it for the final edition, but originally it wasn't supposed to be part of the Tanya. He inserted it to be in chapter 32. So really, whether you were following along all the previous classes or whether you plan to come back for all the later classes, chapter 32 is almost like a standalone chapter. It's like either parenthetical, but it's really a heart of the Tanya. But even if you're not here before, you could still just pop right in, and chapter 32 is a great place to start. So we'll start with chapter 32. First, we'll make a blessing on our juice or coffee, whatever you have in front of you. If you have any, we'll make a blessing together. It goes like this. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyah bidvaro. Today is the day after Shavuot, after the beautiful holiday. Shavuot is a very special time, is when we receive the Torah. So today is the 8th of Sivan, and the 8th of Sivan is known as the day after the holiday. Every holiday, the day after it is known as Isru Chag. And I think, Shira, you're there. So we've spoken about this before. The word Isru Chag literally would mean tied to the holiday. The day after the holiday is still attached to you're still on a high from the special holiday that we just had, which was Shavuot. We had a lovely evening here with many, many friends celebrating with a delicious dairy dinner. We enjoyed everyone that came. And it's your father's birthday. Wow. 80, how old did he turn? Shenahara. 85. Wow. Wow. Okay. That's beautiful. Very nice. All right. I'll be pulling up the new chapter on the screen and we'll get started. Just a warning again, you may hear the audio as it pops up. It may just go on its own. And
Rabbi,
yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't tell you personally how sorry I am that you lost your father.
Thank you. And that's very nice of you, Frida.
Harvest.
I appreciate it. And we really enjoyed having you the other evening for Shavuot. So it was nice to celebrate together.
Glad I was there.
Awesome. Okay, so actually, I did promise us last week, I'm just going to share my screen. And whether you're following along in the book, I'll announce the page in a moment. But if you're following along on the Kindle, which I just popped up on the screen, I hope you could see. I did say last week that we're going to just review the practical lessons that in the printed edition, in the paper book of the Tanya, it's interspersed throughout the chapter. But in the Kindle edition, they actually just put it all at the end. So I'm just going to read the practical lessons, even though each paragraph doesn't really flow from one to the next. It's just a summary of different lessons from the chapter of 31. I still would like to just read it. Sometimes negativity needs to be met with negativity. A short bout of depressive thoughts can knock you out of a bad state. If you feel you are in a state of atzvus, which is depression, try to transform the emotion into the more empowering and energizing form of merirus, bitterness. You can do this by getting angry with your impulse to evil. Tell it what you really think of it. The more repulsive and disgraceful you find your body and animal soul to be, the more you should have pity on your divine soul trapped there. and resolve to free your divine soul through Torah and mitzvot, right? This part we were talking about, look at your soul like a princess that has been banished or lost from her father's palace. And when it comes back, it's this incredible feeling. And until then, you have this pity, just wanting the soul, wanting the princess to be back home. All worship through Torah and mitzvot is really a kind of teshuvah, in the sense that it facilitates the return of the trapped divine soul back to God. This was a really stunning part of Tanya, where we said that teshuvah is not only on bad things that a person did. Teshuvah is every person is returning a return of the soul back to God. And that was a beautiful expression or description of what teshuvah is about. Okay, with that, that was just a summary of the previous chapter, but now we'll go to this beautiful chapter, chapter 32, which the title is Love Your Fellow as Yourself. In Hebrew, the word for that would be V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, which we know for one of the most important mitzvahs of the Torah from the book of Leviticus, that says you have to love your fellow as you love yourself. So let's begin with section 1, relationships and the ego. And actually, hold on 1 second. My book is over there. If you are looking inside, you're going to be on chapter 32, which is on page 361 in the printed edition of the Tanya. And I don't know if you could see it on the screen. I'm just going to pull this up again. Every now and then when we start a new chapter, I like to just read the section of where we're up to in the Tanya. So this is like a map. Stop sharing for a moment. You could see it a little bigger. This is like a map that we have of the Tanya, and each one is a kind of color-coded, each section. It lumps a few chapters together, and it gives it a different color. So in this one, chapter 32 really has its own section, its own color, which is just quite interesting. So as I said before, it's actually a little longer than usual. It just talks about the number 32 equaling heart, but I will just summarize that again as he words it over here. Rejecting the body and identifying with the soul, which is what we learned about in chapter 31, also facilitates love between Jews. For it is only our bodies that separate us. Our souls, on the other hand, are one. So this is the connection. He's trying to just show you the flow between chapter 31 and 32. That 31 was emphasizing the power of our soul, rejecting the body that's pulling us down, and really emphasizing our soul. And when each of us emphasize our soul, it really connects us, because our bodies is what separate us. I have this type of body, you have that type of body, I have these desires coming from the body, you have those desires, but on a soul level, we're one. All Jews are one. Besides this connection, however, chapter 32 is actually a digression from the previous chapter, not extant in the original manuscript of Tanya. The discourse in Avas Yisrael, which is love your fellow, love a fellow Jew, was prepared only later for the first printing of Tanya in 1796 and inserted as a 32nd chapter. Significantly, 32, which is Lev, also spells heart, Lev. For loving one's fellow Jew is the heart of Tanya. And one final thing on the chapter, here's what it's describing what's going to be learned in this chapter. Despising the body and taking delight in the soul is a straight and easy path to fulfilling the mitzvah to love your fellow as yourself. Only our bodies separate us, our souls are all one. So this is going to be a stunning idea of how could you really love someone else, is when you realize that on a soul level, that's part of me. We're all one. My soul, your soul, we're all one. We're brothers, we're sisters. So let's see that inside. Chapter 32, if you're looking in the book, it's going to be on 361. If you're looking on the Kindle, I'll be sharing the screen right now. Okay, section 1, relationships and the ego. The tools on meditation in chapters 29 through 31 will help you to loosen the ties of your ego and find joy in the spiritual through adopting the outlook of your divine soul. In this chapter, we will discuss how this egoless attitude will affect the way that you look at other people. So till now, the deflation of the ego was more focused inside, was how to better yourself, how to pity your soul, how to identify more with your soul than your body. But now this will also be a bonus that helps you look at other people in this way. Now, when you put into practice the above ideas in the previous chapter, so that your body becomes disgusting in your eyes and repulsive, which is a quote from Tehillim, and you find happiness in the joy of your divine soul alone, this frame of mind will be an easily accessible, straightforward path to come to fulfill the mitzvah, to love your fellow as yourself, extending love to every soul in Israel, from great to small. As Maimonides rules, every person is commanded to love each and every individual of Israel as much as he loves his own self. As the verse states, love your fellow as yourself. So the question that we're kind of addressing is, how could a person love another person as much as they love themselves? I am me, you are you. I love myself more. So how could you identify with such a strong love for someone else? So that's what he's going to explain now. For in your body, which separates you from others, becomes repulsive and disgraceful to you, you will appreciate more the value of the divine soul which unites us all. So if you're identifying with a body, you're right. I'm different than you, and I like my body better than yours. But if you're identifying with the soul on a soul level, if you appreciate your divine soul, you'll appreciate another divine soul as well, because from a soul level, we're all one. And as for the soul and spirit, who knows their greatness and worth in their root and source in the living God? Even if you disregard the concerns of the body, there might be an obstacle in coming to love your fellow as yourself from the soul's perspective. For example, if someone is inferior to you spiritually, you may find it difficult to love them as yourself. Therefore, the Tanya states here, even if someone appears to be lower than you, spiritually speaking, as for the soul and spirit, who knows their greatness and worth? You ought to humble yourself before this person, for perhaps his or her soul is greater than yours. So this is such a beautiful thing that even if they seem inferior to you spiritually, you seem like on a higher plane, on a higher level, really on the source, on the root level, how do we know the worth of each soul? Maybe their soul is actually higher. So therefore you should humble yourself in front of that person, because from a source, from a root level, they could be even on a higher level. And ultimately, at the level of essence, all souls are equal, being that all of them are alike and they all have one Father. Ultimately, it doesn't matter who has the greater soul powers. At the level of soul essence, we are all one at this and the same. On that level, your love for your fellow will be unconditional. And that's why all Israel are called brothers, literally due to their single source of their souls in the one God. So this is such a beautiful thing. We're all brothers, and which means we all come from the same Father. We all come from the same God. And it's only their bodies that separate them. And therefore, for those who make their bodies primary and their souls secondary, it's impossible for them to have genuine love and brotherhood among them, but only a conditional love. So let's just pause here for a moment. Mrs. Berger, it's not my birthday. It's Shira's father's 85th birthday. The day I turned 85, Kinahara. But yeah, now it's Shira's father. We're celebrating his birthday. Thank you, but I appreciate Mrs. Berger. So in the Mishnah and Ethics of the Fathers, we learned it in a Pirkei Avos class a few weeks ago. There's a big talk about different types of love. You could have a love that is conditional and a love that is unconditional. They actually give examples. They talk about a love that is conditional being the love of, there is a man by the name of Amnon. He was attracted to the beauty of a lady named Tamar. But after he was able to sleep with her, that attraction left. So it was a very conditional love. He was craving love, but it wasn't love. It was conditional. It was a love that's based on something. And many of us, we are attracted to people, but it's not real. It's all based on something that they do for us. It's all based on something that they give us. That's conditional love. And therefore, if the condition is gone, the love is gone also. That's conditional. The true love is a love that is unconditional. The example the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot gives is the love of David, and Jonathan. King David, before he was king, had and even after, he had a best friend whose name was Jonathan. Unfortunately, he was killed in battle together with his father Saul. But Saul couldn't understand why Jonathan is best friends with David. Because David, everyone knew was going to become the next king, but really it should have gone to Jonathan, who was the heir, the blood lineage of royalty to his father Saul. But yet Jonathan did everything he can to help and support and even save David, even though it was against his benefit. That's an unconditional love. So over here, if we emphasize the difference between us from our bodies, meaning what our selfish wants are, when it says bodies, it means from our more animal soul, from our physical needs, our physical wants, then we're different. And it's a conditional love. It's going to be much harder for me to love you as much as I love myself. You can't fulfill the mitzvah of the Torah genuinely. But if you, based on what we learned in chapter 31, you make the soul identity the main emphasis, meaning when you look at yourself in the mirror, you're not just seeing a body, you're seeing a beautiful soul. And you're gonna connect with that, you identify with that soul, and therefore you want to do mitzvahs to support that soul, to nourish that soul, to strengthen that soul, my soul. So when you look at yourself as a soul and you look at someone else the same, when you focus more inside and you see your soul, when you look at someone else, you see more of their soul. And when you see souls, all you see is the connection between us. Because that's what souls are about. It's about connecting. It's about a union of souls. Just like when two Jewish people get married, it's not just soul mates, meaning that they get along together. It's one soul that now is reunited, that got fragmented at birth, and now is being put back together. It's the greatest joy. That's what's happening on a soul level between our souls. We're all connected. And therefore, when I see you, I see a soul, it complements me as well. You love someone else as much as you love yourself because we're all one. It's like brothers and sisters, they're siblings. It's a natural love. Unlike a spousal relationship where you have to develop the love and it's step by step, you grow on it. A sibling love is natural because you come from the same source. The same is also with our souls. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all one. And therefore, the love is automatically there. And we have to identify each other based on that source. And when we do that, we see ourselves as souls that are fully connected. Let me just pull up that question. It's a reminder that our human ego judges and keeps us seeing the separateness. Exactly. And unfortunately, at times, it's too, like, the separation between people is just too much. I see it now it's just, everyone has their opinion, and really it started last year at the start of COVID, but it's gotten to a point where everyone feels they have it exactly figured out. What is okay, what is not okay, where you can go, where you cannot go. So there could be people that are very strict, but they travel to Florida because in their mind it makes sense that the airplanes are safe, so they travel to Florida. Other people, they don't want to leave their house, and anyone who does is totally irresponsible. Everyone feels that whatever they're doing is the right way, and everyone else not. And this is a blanket statement that I don't mean to make one big thing, but the judgment out there is at a peak. It's like, I don't know if it's always been like this, but I'm just hearing everyone complaining about other people. It's just like it's too much, and we have to take a step back, and we have to just look at ourselves without judging each other. Look at ourselves and look at the others from a soul level, and want to support someone else because it's really part of me, and want to support myself because it's part of them, and we're all on the same team. We're all one. We're all souls. Unconditional love. Thank you. Let's see a question from Cheryl. Why does it say we should love our Jewish brothers as ourselves and not everyone? Ooh, that's a good question. So meaning, Cheryl, ask your question. So you're saying it should have said love the other like you love everyone. Is that what you would prefer it saying? So if I'm understanding the question, if I understand your question, the complaint is coming from a place of fear. So if I understand your question, oh, that's a good point. It's a place of insecurity, Maddie. I like that. Place of insecurity, a place of fear. Yeah. So Cheryl, just to make sure I understand your question, why does it say we should love our Jewish brothers as ourselves and not everyone? Meaning it should say love your Jewish brother or sister like you love everyone. Or you're saying it should say love everyone like you love yourself. Oh, God, I think that's your question, right? Why not say love your Jewish? Why not love everyone? Meaning Jews and non-Jews, everyone.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
got it. Okay, got it. I didn't understand your question at first. So, it's a very good question. A very good question. Would you say it's possible to love a stranger on the street as much as you could love your mother?
No.
Why?
But well, that's the question. That is the point. That one should love everyone the same. I mean, I understand God separates out in the 10 Commandments, love, honor thy parents. So somewhere there's more reverence toward them and more reverence toward God than loving idols and things like that. So there's a hierarchy perhaps, but yeah, no, I think that, I mean, from everything I see within you, you take everyone in, you don't segregate.
Absolutely.
We still judge, but we try not to.
Right, and it says it's one of the things we can't spare ourselves from. Every day we have thoughts of Lashon Hara, we have thoughts of
right.
You're right, so we can't spare ourselves. So, but the question is a very powerful one. I have to think about it a little more, but I'll tell you what's just in my mind now. Maybe I'll try to think about it a little more and give a different answer next week. But it's not putting anyone else down. It's stating facts. Just like in a spousal relationship, there's a love you have for your spouse because you're a union of souls.
Right.
That you don't have for everyone. But why not? If you're able to love your spouse that much, why not love everyone that much? It's explaining a certain fact. If you look at our brothers and our sisters in Israel and around the world, any Jew, we are family. We are brothers and sisters. So it's not not segregating and saying we're only loving ourselves and not loving anyone else. It's just.
But maybe that's what it needs to add something. I mean, we can't do that, but in discussion we can.
It may help to define love, because that might tailor how much energy you can apply to people.
That's a good point. So please, Steve, enlighten us. What is love?
Well, I'm just saying that if you define love as the desire to give or wanting to help, you can't love everybody. You're not going to give the shirt off your back to everybody. And that's not wrong or bad, or that's not how God intended or not intended. It's just, as you said, a fact. You only have so much energy to give to somebody, not an emotion, but an action. And you have to be discretionary in where you give your energy. So you dissipate all the energy if you try to love everybody. And if you focus all that energy on one person, they get a lot of your attention. So it's just physically impossible to embrace everybody. You just embrace nobody when you think that you can embrace everybody. You're embracing nobody.
I like
oh
that.
My goodness, I really disagree. I love what you're saying, but I actually think that the part of us feeling like, Rabbi, you used the example of could you love a stranger like you love your mother, and that is where the human ego comes in, because there's so much condition. Like as human beings, we're not able to love unconditionally. And so when you think of someone that you know really, really well, and you have so much invested in each other, then already that's conditional. But for example, I meet strangers all the time. I met someone in the car mechanic place yesterday, and this person was such a beautiful soul. And we had a conversation, and the story was so deep in the space of literally, I don't know, 2 minutes. But I had this overwhelming feeling of love for this person, because I just felt like, what a beautiful spirit. And, you know, I have that quite often. And I feel like with love, it flows out of you. It doesn't actually take up any energy at all. It just flows through you. And the more you have, the more it keeps coming. So when there's a feeling of like, I only have enough to give to someone, then already that is using my resources. There's some sort of conditional thing attached to that, versus just being in the moment, flowing and connecting with someone, which is always filling you up. That's just my personal opinion. And I feel like the only thing that would stop me from loving a stranger more than my mother would be my conditional ego that's telling me, oh yes, but I've had this from my mom, or I've known my mom for this length of time. But you can feel an amazing connection with a stranger. And I've got many very, very close friends that have come from a chance meeting that we just connected at that time, and we became really close friends. So that's just, I just wanted to say that, because I
That's
really,
beautiful.
that's where it comes from.
But I think that confirms what the rabbi said. In other words, what you feel in that person is a soul connection. And once your soul feels a connection, you are bonded. You are feeling in love, and your body will follow. But if your heart didn't feel a soul connection, if that guy was a skinhead and a racist, you wouldn't feel an overriding love for him. But if your soul feels a love, you feel love. But that's what I'm saying. Your soul doesn't necessarily feel love for everybody. And if your soul doesn't feel the love, you can't fake it.
Interesting. Vivian, do you have any comments on this?
I'd like to make a comment on this.
Sure.
There are two ways we can look at love. Okay. One is the beautiful, intense feeling that Maddie just described, which we can have with strangers for, you know, a minute or a few seconds or longer. Someone sitting next to us in an airplane and we never see them again. Is the love is a verb, if you've heard that expression. Love is an action. And if that stranger we had a beautiful connection with asked us for a sizable loan, what would we do? Because we're going to give it. That would be love as a verb. But if our actual blood brother or sister needed the money desperately, I think we'd all agree we'd be much more likely to give the money to the person who was a closer relative to us, or to a spouse, of course. So I don't see how we can love everyone as ourselves when we say love is a verb. You know, we have limited resources.
So these things that, like, I don't have all the answers, and I just love the conversation. Like, I think the conversation itself is so, it's a, first of all, it's a loving conversation. It's such a beautiful conversation to have about what is love. And I definitely don't have all the answers, but like the idea that Mrs. Berger's bringing up, like, it's actually a Jewish law that if a person has a family member in need and a random stranger on the street, you have the obligation to help your family member. There's actually a circle of how you are supposed to allocate your money. So yes, there are very important needs out there, but ultimately you can't support every single need. You know, someone was mad at me, why don't I fight AIDS in Africa? He has a very good point, I should. And it's dear to his heart. But like I said, like my job is to focus on the Jewish community in Novato. It's not putting down any other cause, but if I'm going to try to fight every cause, I'm not going to get any. Like, similar to what Steve was saying, you have your attention, your focus. So when it comes to Jewish law, we have the mitzvah, like when it comes to charity, to give first to your family members, then to a Jewish person in need, and then to anyone else. That's actually the order. Is it putting down anyone else? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's just when rent has to be paid and you only have a certain amount you could give to help that person, you have to help a person that's closer to you before. Is it putting down other people? So Maddie, I love what you were saying, that love is not something limited, and you could have, it's overflowing. You could have love for this person and love for that person. And it's not a limited capacity of love. I think I understood that in your words, and that's beautiful. I agree with that. But we're talking, like, I guess I'm not sure. I guess we have to read the chapter more to understand what this love that we're talking about is. How deep is this love, and how much are you giving of that love? Because we're not just talking about loving someone. That's right, I love everyone, but love someone else as much as you love yourself, which means someone that you're going to give the shirt off your back to, someone that you're going to give all the time in the world to, without any boundaries, without any conditions. That's how you would be treated. That's how you're going to want to treat someone else.
I think that actually one of the biggest human conditions is, I really actually believe that we're all here on earth to learn to love ourselves so that we can then learn to love other people. And so many humans are still on that path of learning to love themselves, which is why they're not able to love other people as in such a pure way. And that's my personal thought about that, but whether it's right or not,
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
The other thing I wanted to say was that we're talking about giving money or tzedakah or helping someone out. And to me, that's a completely different subject from love. Like when we're talking about love in such a spiritual way, it's got nothing to do with anything material. That's then maybe when you're acting or doing something out of a feeling of wanting to help another person. And if I drive past a homeless person and I happen to have $10 in my wallet, right, and that's at that time, the divine timing of that, where I stop at the traffic light and there's someone right there and I can help that person, then we're going to do it. And then maybe I go along the road and now there's another person and I don't have the money in my wallet, then I can't do it. So for me, it's very much about, again, timing and what I can do, what I'm able to do, and just knowing that I'm doing the best I can all the time. I don't know if any of this makes sense.
Of course. But the fact is, Maddie, if it was a family member that was stuck at the bus stop or at the red light and you didn't have money on you, you would actually go to the ATM, come back 20 minutes later and give them the money. But if it's a person you don't know, you wouldn't. Why? Why make that difference? Why make that difference?
I have done that for a stranger. It just depends on the connection in that moment, but then maybe I'm not normal.
No, that's beautiful. Let me hear. I would love to hear what you say, Ava.
I don't think that saying that we should love fellow Jews as we love ourselves it's not saying that we shouldn't love and be open to loving and helping everyone. But as you said, it's kind of, just like we said that all of us Jews are connected, all of our souls are one. So it's kind of referring to our extended family. And you help your family first. It doesn't mean you're not open to helping and relating to and loving someone else. But it's just reminding us to, if you don't have the resources to help everybody, who do you help first? First, you try to help your family. That doesn't mean that, like you said, Maddie, if you see someone in that moment and you help them, you don't know who they are, they're Jew or whatever. It's not saying not to do that. I've done that as well. And it's just, in the moment you see someone, something about them touches you and you want to help them. But it's just kind of saying in the first, let's make sure that we are loving our family and helping our family, which is our fellow Jews. And then as we continue, we can help, as many as we can. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Is it possible to think of love like it's a service we do to other people? Like love is we do for other people. If we do it for ourselves, it's an emotion. It falls in a different category. Love is something that we do for somebody else. It's much like speech. Speech is something we do to convey an idea to somebody else, not to benefit ourselves. And if we think about speech, if you had a good idea, you theoretically wanted to tell everybody, the whole world. But if you're talking to the whole world, you sound kind of nutty. If you have something important to say, you find the people closest to you and you limit your conversation and focus all your energy to speak to them.
Wow.
And I think love is the same way. If you got something important to give, much like speech, you wouldn't say, talk to the whole world. You look like you're a crazy person walking around. If you talk to the whole world, you're really just talking to yourself. And if you love the whole world, you're really, I think, just loving yourself. It's much like speech. So that might be one way to look at it.
I love that.
I love that, Steve. We're not focusing on the greatest love, which is connected to Hashem, and that the illumination from him or her, illumination from God through the different levels of Sifrio and coming within our beings allows us to love purely and unconditionally.
I like that. Thank you, Mrs. Zolan. Thank you, Frida. I like that. Good. We're going to go further. Maddie, we're going to leave, and Cheryl, we're going to leave the question open. Meaning, it's just beautiful that we're here on a Wednesday morning and we're working ourselves to how to identify our love for ourselves and then shower that to the world, and how far reach are we supposed to have in that. I think it's just inspiring that we're focusing on this. We don't have all the answers. Steve, I love what you said. I love what everyone said. If anyone has anything to add, kol hakavod, you're welcome to. What did you say is a place of insecurity? I don't remember. I say a lot of things. Oh, the fear. I don't remember exactly for that question. Okay, we're going to go further. The second section is cool. It actually starts with it's a little story. I'll just tell it to you more outside. Every year when in Hebrew school, or when I start bar mitzvah lessons with a 12-year-old boy, or bat mitzvah lessons that Dina shares with a girl, one of the most beautiful stories is the golden rule of Torah, which comes from the story of Hillel. Hillel was one of the greatest leaders. He actually died at the age of 120, just like Moses. Hillel lived during the times of the Second Temple era, like 2,000 years ago. And one of the most fascinating stories about Hillel takes place where there's a person who was considering to convert. The way the Talmud describes him is he was more of a letz, he was more of a clown, just looking to incite trouble and trying to drive rabbis crazy. So first he went to Shammai, and he went to Shammai and says, teach me the whole Torah on standing on one foot, feeling almost like that's not possible. And Shammai had no patience for it, and he was insulted. On behalf of Torah, he said, do you think this is what Torah is about? And he banished him. It says he took a stick and he chased him out of the study hall, because I've been spending my whole life studying Torah, and you want to know it on one foot in 20 seconds? Impossible. And then he went to Hillel and he asked the same thing to Hillel. And Hillel said, okay, here it goes. In Hebrew, he said, 5 words. What is hateful unto you, don't do to others. That is the entire Torah. The rest is commentary. Now go and study. The golden rule of Torah that Hillel was teaching him is, you want to know the ABCs of Judaism, is about loving your fellow, loving one another. That's the golden rule. So now the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe here, is going to quote this passage of the Talmud, the story of Hillel, and explain it to complement this theory of love that we're going to try to understand in Tanya. So section 2 is loving your fellow is the whole Torah. So and this will help us explain Hillel, the elder's comment about observing this mitzvah of loving your fellow as yourself. It's the bottom of 362, or also the bottom of the page in the Kindle. It's the whole Torah, all of it. The rest is commentary. That's the story that I just quoted you. Hillel's statement was not an exaggeration. The mitzvah of loving your fellow has a spiritual dynamic which mirrors the spiritual cause and effect system of the Torah. As we have seen, the cause which brings you to love your fellow is disregarding the mentality of the animal soul and body and shifting to the higher consciousness of the divine soul. The effect is that you bond and connect with your fellow. These two phases of initially transcending the physical and then returning to connecting with it amid a higher consciousness represent the fundamental basis of the Torah's spiritual dynamic. So we're about to see some heavy stuff, but this is so beautiful. Using the Kabbalah, we're going to go into a little bit of Kabbalah here, but just to see the path of where we're coming from is the Hillel equates love for your fellow to the whole Torah. He says, love your fellow, that's the entire Torah. That's a very heavy statement. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. Why the entire Torah? So he's saying because there's a cause and effect. How do you love someone else? Is when you rise above the consciousness, the lower consciousness, which is the mentality of our animal soul. That's the cause. You rise yourself to the consciousness of the divine soul. The effect is that your body, that you connect with another person, with your fellow. So to rise to the transcendence to higher states over our physical, and then being able to use that as an effect to connect with another, that's how Torah works. Let's see how. So this is a beautiful paragraph of this chapter. For the Torah's whole basis and root principle is twofold. So here we're going to see the whole principle of Torah. The Kabbalists describe this cycle as ratzo followed by shov. Those are Hebrew words, which literally means running towards transcendence and subsequently returning to the sensory worldly reality. I'm just going to explain ratzo, let's just say a little bit more and then we'll explain it. The Torah's first root principle is to raise and elevate the soul's importance over the body, lifting the soul higher and higher to the root and source of all worlds. That's ratzo. Ratzo means to run to a higher place. Ratzo means transcendence. Ratzo means the soul's yearn to be higher. And also, as will be explained below, the second root principle of the Torah is to draw down God's infinite light into the spiritual space referred to by the Zohar as Knesset Yisrael, which is the source of all of the souls of all of Israel. So let's just pause here for a second. In our life, every day we experience this ratzoy and shuv. Ratzoy means transcendence, the yearn to be connected to something higher. Shuv means the realization that my job is to be right here. Use that inspiration to be able to have an effect on another. It's a cute little story. In the olden days, actually by the first Chabad Rebbe, before he became the Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, Reb Shneir Zalman, there was times that they would have like a spiritual meditation together with friends, and they would get on such a spiritual high. They were like above the worlds. In Hebrew, it's called dvekus. When they would connect, davuk literally means glue or connection. When their souls would be connecting to a godly divine space, to a much higher place. And one of the times in this spiritual ecstasy that they were experiencing, it was early morning before prayers, and they were all meditating together. And one of the colleagues of the Rebbe, this is before he was Rebbe, one of the colleagues of these Hasidim, they were at such a high that he was almost losing himself. Like spiritually, his soul was expiring from his body. It was too much. And the Alter Rebbe saw that he was kind of losing himself, that his ratzoi, his yearn and desire of transcendence reached such a high place that it was dangerous for his life. He actually ran to the store. They were in the middle of the streets when this was taking place. He ran to the bakery, which was just right there. He got a bagel, spread it with butter, and he stuffed it into the chassid's mouth. The guy's on a spiritual high, and he stuffed a bagel with butter in his mouth. That's the story. You would think, what are you doing? Let this guy have his spiritual moment. But that chassid was experiencing a ratzoi without the shuv. Shuv means to return, to come back into this world. You can't just be in a shuv moment. A shuv needs to have the force of the ratzoi first. It needs to have a transcendence, a yearn, a desire to be higher. But once you have it, you have to come back into this world. Ratzoi and shuv. So the two principles of the Torah, let's just see how he was wording it here, is the root principle is to raise the soul over the body, meaning to emphasize the soul more than the body, to reach higher and higher for the soul. But then once you have that yearn and you're tapping into a higher place, where he words over here, God's infinite light, you can't remain there. You have to bring it back into this world. You have to bring it back into this space. And we see this every day, right? Whether it's a holiday that someone is inspired from a holiday, you can't say, that's it, I'm not going to go to work anymore, I'm just going to study Torah. No, you have to take that inspiration and bring it into your work, bring it into your workplace, bring it into your environment, bring it into your family, bring it into your friendships. You can't remain on a high place. you're supposed to take that high and bring it down in a shuv, which is to return it and bring it and incorporate it into your daily life. So let's just see that connection again with this. He's saying that this is the principle of Torah, the ratzoi, which is the transcendence of the soul to reach higher, and then the shuv, which is the return of the soul, taking that high of the soul in its Torah level, and now bringing that infinite light into this world. He's going to explain it a little more. Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Can I say something? To me, when I pray in the morning, one of the things that I do at the end of my prayers is I say, okay, bring this into your day. What are you going to do, wow, Nancy, to bring this into your day? You know, as we learn in the Tanya, through speech, through thoughts, through action. And by my focusing on that, I think it's doing this thing that you're talking about, which is going from the spiritual of, saying prayers, reading the Torah, and then focusing on, okay, what does that mean for me today to bring to the world? Amazing.
Nancy, when I finish prayers, the thought that comes to my mind is, oh no, how late am I for carpool? And I'm rushing out the door. So I'm gonna try to make an effort to take 30 seconds and to really try to calibrate it and bring it down. That's amazing. Nancy, that's inspiring. Thank you. Awesome. So the same thing that we have with this ratzoi and shuv, like Nancy's saying, from prayer or from any other, you have a spiritual high transcendence and you're supposed to bring it down. That's exactly what love is about. Love is to transcend over the body that separates us, to bring it, to reach a higher place that's seeing us all in the same union from the same Father. And then once we're on that transcendental state of love, then it's about how am I actually going to apply that into that person? How am I going to practice that feeling of connection, of union into the concrete, into the day-to-day, right? The famous, the beautiful story of the rabbi who's giving a sermon in shul, in synagogue on Yom Kippur, all about education and about the children are the future, and we have to be extra kind with them. We have to show more love and patience with them. And then it came the Yom Kippur, the break, and the kids are outside, and they're being kids, and he's starting to yell at them. And one of the things that they were doing, the shul just paved their parking lot, and the kids were writing their initials in the parking lot. And so he was yelling at them, "Stop doing this." And his wife comes out, the Rebbetzin, and says, "Rabbi, you just in shul, you were just saying how you have to be extra kind to the children. Why are you yelling at them?" And he says, "I was talking about in the abstract, not about the concrete, but the idea where we could have this imagination of the union that we're supposed to have from a soul level and transcendence, but it actually all has to translate into the concrete. It has to be brought down, like Nancy was saying. How am I going to incorporate this in my practice in my day-to-day?" So let's see a little more inside. I think we read to the end of that page. This second phase, I'm at the top of the Kindle. Shu, or returning, is the mirror image of the first, a reconnecting of the transcendent reality reached by ratzoi and drawing it back down into a more worldly entity, in this case, our souls. So that one will merge with one. The one God will merge with our souls. And this happens specifically when they are united down below in this world. But not when there is division among the souls, God forbid. For the Blessed Holy One won't dwell in a blemished place. And as we say, bless all of us, our Father. We say this in our Amidah, Barcheinu Avinu, as one with the light of your face. Kulanu ke'echad. As has been explained at length elsewhere. In order for the second phase, which is Shuv, to be effective, for God's infinite light to gush into Knesset Yisrael, the source of our souls, we need to be united down here in the physical world. If we are not united down here, Knesset Yisrael will be fragmented and won't receive God's infinite light, since the Blessed Holy One won't dwell in a blemished place. From this brief insight, we see that the mitzvah of loving your fellow has a spiritual dynamic, which is central to the whole Torah. With this in mind, when you observe this mitzvah, it will bring even more joy of your soul, knowing that you are doing something central to the Torah's division. Let's read. I just want to summarize a little bit of what we've been saying. I'm just going to read first a Hasidic thought that is not in the Kindle edition. It's just in the book. If you're looking in the book, it's on page 363 at the bottom. The concerns of my body and ego direct me towards a scarcity mentality of competition and jealousy. The best route to fully love my fellow as myself is to find happiness in the joy of my divine soul alone. So these ideas, it'll take time to for these ideas to fully get absorbed. I think these are very powerful ideas. And hopefully next week I'll try to give a little summary and some more thoughts, especially on Cheryl's question and Maddie. We definitely have to explain this a little more. But just to explain this last point, Hillel is comparing and saying that you want to know the whole Torah, it's all about love for your fellow. That when you treat another as you would want to be treated, that is the entire Torah. Because what he's saying is the principles of the Torah is the idea of Ratzoi and Shuv. Transcendence, meaning reaching a soul level of a high infinite light, and then bringing it down into this world, what he's translating here as Knesset Yisrael, which is bringing it into this assembly, bringing it into this world, into our space of Israel, in our space of the world, bring it here. Love, how do you achieve true love is by not focusing on the bodies, on the animal souls, on the differences, on my personality versus your personality, my food desires versus yours, or my style versus yours, but on a soul level, the union of the soul is we all come from the same Father. We're all brothers and sisters. And when you have that mentality, when you're able to transcend to that level, then bring it down and actually practice that with love and how it actually comes out. So that Ratzoi and Shuv that we see from Torah, we also see in love. And that's why Hillel is able to compare them and say that they're all one. There's a lot more to really
Can
summarize.
I ask you a question?
Sure.
Um,
This is chapter 32, Maddie. And it's
Yes.
easy to remember because 32 in Hebrew is lev, which means heart. This is the heart of the Torah where it talks about practicing true love. Yeah.
how many times, like during the day, would you say that it's safe to meditate, trying to get up to the rots and then bring it down to the shoe, so that you don't become like the person who needed the bagel shoved in his mouth?
Right. So really the question is how often to do it. I don't know the answer, but it's not, it depends on the day of the week. Shabbat is actually there as a mini Yom Kippur every week, where that's your recharge for the whole week. So on Shabbat is a time when you tune out from everything and you're more focused on the meditation. You're more focused on reaching a higher light through study, through meditation, where you have more of the space to do it. You're not thinking about where you have to go next and where you have to run to. Shabbat is almost like a mini Yom Kippur, where you're supposed to reach that. And then actually Shabbat means, the word Shabbat has in it shuv or tashuv, if you spell the words backward, because then Shabbat is the time to reach higher. And then now how am I going to incorporate that into my week? And by the way, we end Shabbat with Havdalah. Havdalah we do on Saturday night with a candle, a spice, a cup of wine, and we do basically use all our senses. Right? You have to smell the spice, you have to look at the candle, you have to taste the wine. And you have to also touch. Everything is there's the we use our sensories, and then also in Hebrew, yayin starts with a yud. Bet, yayin means wine. Let me just explain a little more. Yayin means wine. It starts with a yud. Bet starts the word besamim, which means spice, which we use on Saturday night. The mem is Yud, Beis. Nun stands for ner, which means a flame. And the hey, which means havdalah, means to separate. Together, those four letters, it spells the word yibaneh. Yud, bet, nun, hey. It's the four things we do by havdalah, we taste the wine, we smell the spice, the besamim, we look at the flame, and we recite the Havdalah together. Those 4 letters, 4 words, spells the word Yibaneh, which means to build. The point is that after Shabbat finishes, our job is Yibaneh, our job is to build up the world. Our job is to create and make a big difference in the world. The reason why I'm trying to say that is that every Shabbat, we're supposed to do that more on a magnified level. And then we're supposed to translate that also during the week on a mini level, which means not all day are we looking for transcendence. Our prayer is like the mini Shabbat of the week. During prayer time, it could be even just a 60-second meditation at the beginning of our day. For many, it's the Moda Ani, which is the initial moments of our morning. We start by saying, thank you, God, for giving me back my soul and putting your faith in me that I can make a difference in the world. And we also end our day with Shema. During those times, and if you're able to pray more, that's the time of Ratzui, of transcendence, and then you're able to bring it down. So you have it once a year on Yom Kippur, you have it once a month on Rosh Chodesh, you have it once a week on Shabbat, and then every day you're supposed to have it on a mini level. That Ratzui and Shuv duality, both of them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So bagels is important medicine like chicken soup. Awesome. It's like it has to have lox and cream cheese on it, but then you're good. Food and Torah gives us physical and spiritual life. Awesome. Well said. You're welcome, Maddie. Shabbat, the mini Yom Kippur. That is likely going to happen to someone who is enlightened rather than most people, I imagine. Yeah. So, but we need to try it. All right. Everyone went a little overtime. I apologize. Have a great end to your week. I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed the class. And next week, we'll really try to hone in more about the love and focus more on this chapter. Everyone have a great end to your week.
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Toda
Bye,
rabah.
everybody. You're welcome.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.